upstairs. We have that urinals. But actually, urinals, we're not sure what. I was just kind of disappointed that we had 6 people show up. We should have been. Yeah, a lot of the heavy hitters. Did you forward them?
Well, Nova, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron?
Here.
Councilmember Jermoff?
Here.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Here.
Mayor Potter?
Yeah.
All are present.
Okay, first item on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to comment on an item that is not on today's agenda. 3-minute limitation on that testimony. If you'd like to speak, now would be a time. Let's see, anybody in the public, Nova?
We have a hand raised on Zoom.
Michael McWalters.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Potter. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I was having lunch and I was thinking, first of all, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties when I tried to speak on Thursday at the Sunset Center. But the reason for today's call, I was having lunch and I thought, if we develop the north and south lots of the Sunset Center with affordable housing, what happens to the Sunset Center? It's a question. And then I happened to open the pine cone for March the 8th. And the very first letter is from Beth Bowman, Executive Director of the Sunset Cultural Center. And she said that they were not even given a seat at the table in the conversation and the discussion around the affordable housing going into their north and south lots. And so my question is, are they going to be included in all of this before we have to submit the final response to the California Housing Department? That's it for now. Thank you, Mayor Potter.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your testimony. Is there anybody else wishing to speak today?
There are no other hands raised.
All right, we'll close the public comment period, bring it back to orders of business. We have the consent calendar before us. Gentlemen, ladies, questions on the consent? I don't see anybody. Is anybody in the public wishing to pull an item off of consent? I don't see anybody. Bring it back to council.
I'd like to make comments on a couple items,
All right.
but I don't know which ones they are because I don't have that on here. It's on the police report and on the forestry report.
All right, your comments are?
Okay, my comments are the tree report is very alarming, how many trees were lost and how few have been required to be replaced. There were 17 upper canopy trees, I believe, removed and only 6 replacements, 48 other trees and only 6 replacements. That's very concerning to me, just as a note. Also, on the police report, you'll see that I think there were 3 that went over the limit. I don't know whether it was police or ambulance. It was one of those reports, and it said that they could not find addresses, and I just wanted to point that out. And then there were a couple others that were over the time because they were coming from a farther distance. And I think our residents need to understand that sometimes our ambulance is out of town, and AMR answers it, or sometimes they're just far away and it takes them longer. So I'd just like that to be an educational moment, that we do face some challenges sometimes with those timing to get to things. There was also something, I guess I'll confine it to that today.
Yeah, those are comments. Is there anybody else with comments or questions from the council? All right, I guess we went to the public already. Is there anybody wishing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3 on the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion is second. Nova, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Dramoff?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Yes.
Mayor Potter?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, then under orders of business, we have received a report from Cal-Am. It introduced the Dolores Street Water Main Replacement Project and authorized issuance of an encroachment permit and special conditions of approval. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'd just like to make a very few introductory comments before we turn it over to Cal-Am for their presentation. First of all, I wanted to point out that this is not a city project. It's not a capital project. It is a private utility project fully funded by Cal-Am. The pipeline alignment and the plans were all completely vetted by city staff. We identified 70 conditions of approval. It's in your packet. That would be tied to a proposed encroachment permit that we're asking you to approve tonight. We do know that some of the conditions of approval are redundant. Some are focused for the general contractor, some are for Cal-Am, some are for both, so that's why there's some redundancy. We know that. There are benefits to the city for doing this project. For example, we'll have more reliable water service in that particular area that Cal-Am will be explaining. We'll end up with 2 additional fire hydrants. All the fire hydrants will be placed, plus we'll have 2 additional ones on Dolores. And also, when they're all said and done, they'll be slurry sealing the roadway for us. Staff recommends the council authorize the encroachment permit with special conditions of approval, and upon council's approval, we'll be following a notice of exemption as required by the California Environmental Equality Act as soon as tomorrow. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to David Pizzini. He's the Cal-Am Engineering Project Manager. After David's presentation, he and I will be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Welcome.
To do here. Oh, there we go. All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is David Pizzini. I'm an engineering project manager with California American Water. I'm here tonight to give you a synopsis and summary of our Dolores Street main replacement project. The project just quite in a nutshell, the limits of it, it's going to run along Dolores Street from 8th Avenue to Santa Lucia Avenue. The scope of the project and need for it is we're going to be replacing 3,000 linear feet of old 4-inch cast iron water main along Dolores Street with new 8-inch PVC water main. As was mentioned, we're going to upgrade all the existing fire hydrants. In addition to adding 2 new hydrants along 9th and 11th Avenue. All 83 services along this alignment will be replaced. And then along the side streets, we will be reconstructing and upgrading the system connections along the side streets at the intersections. We have designed the water main so that it is a safe distance away from the gas and the sewer main. And then upon completion of the water main, we'll be paving the water main trench. And then what was mentioned, we will be slurry sealing the roadway from edge of pavement to edge of pavement. Our design team for the project was H2O Urban Solutions. And then the contractor that we have awarded the contract to is Monterey Peninsula Engineering. And then the reason for this project, it was identified as part of our planning study, and it's to improve fire flow capacity in this area, improve reliability since it is an old main, and then it will provide better pressures to residents in this area. The schedule of the project, again, this is preliminary. What we showed it for your information, but we are anticipating a 4-month construction window, and then there is a lapse time where we have to let the pavement cure before we can do this slurry. So in total, it'd be about 6 months, but 4 months of the main construction of the project. As we worked with the city, we have identified customer impacts and ways that we would mitigate that. So there will be traffic detours in the work zone during the work hours of 8 to 5 p.m. We would be detouring just based on block by block. We wouldn't be detouring the entire 8th Avenue to Santa Lucia. So our contractor would just work block by block as they work along Dolores. Residents that would be in the affected work zone will be allowed into the work zone to get into their properties as they need to. We will need to limit street parking during the work hours for the crews to have a safe and efficient work zone. As I mentioned with the access, they will have, if a resident's driveway is within the trench area, they will provide a steel plate so they're able to get in and out of their driveway safely. During the slurry seal, again, we'll have to limit street parking so that they can finalize the slurry seal of the road. But that's something that they would do to, let residents know not to be on the street. They will slurry seal usually in the morning, and then by that evening, residents will be able to return to their properties. There will be construction noise. We are aware of that, but again, we would limit that to the work hours of 8 to 5. We'll have our inspector out there to ensure that the contractor's not starting, at 7:30 and impacting residents' morning or staying too late. There will be limited water shutdowns. We will need to shut the water down as we tie customers over. And during that time, we don't allow any shutdown longer than an 8-hour window. So again, it would be about the 8 to 5 period of a water main shutdown. Usually it's sooner than that, but again, we do limit that shutdown, and we do provide 48-hour notice to all residents of when that will occur. As mentioned, we have coordinated with the city, specifically on with forestry. We prepared an arborist report as part of the design. We had Denise Duffy and Associates prepare the arborist report. They did work with the city on site, and as part of that, they provided recommended protection measures that we have included with our contract to the contractor, so they will have to adhere to those measures. And so the approach and proposed water main alignment was developed to reduce the risk of impacting the existing trees. Our designer worked closely with the arborist to ensure that we were staying on either one side or the other side of the road to minimize the impacts to the trees. Part of what I talked about on the traffic detours around the work zone, we would do it by block, and we would want to close block by block. That would also, that would be to minimize impacts to residents, but also to reduce the impacts to trees. If we're able to close block by block, our contractor has a larger corridor to work within. If they have to swing any of their equipment, that'll be a safer impact to the trees. And then again, we worked with the forester or the arborist to maintain a safe distance. So we weren't directly either on the edge or outside of the pavement. We tried to stay as far away from the sewer and gas, but also as far away from any tree impacts that we would find. One thing as part of the project, we noticed during design, a lot of the existing water meter boxes that were placed a long time ago are now located at the base of trees. Part of this project is to try, where feasible, to move those meter boxes away from the base of the trees. That way, if there's ever a leak, our crews, or if it's on the customer side, their plumber don't have to dig around the tree, and we can move their service line away from that. And then with the arborist report, there are recommendations, the protection, so there'll be temporary fencing, things like that, and other best management practices. Those will be placed in coordination with our arborist, with the contractor prior, and then if there's any changes that need to occur, will be done during construction. And then finally, our community coordination. So we do outreach to all the property owners prior to the project. We will be sending out letters Once we know our official start date, we usually try to send out 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. So letters will go out with a 24/7 contact for the residents. If they have questions about the project, they're able to reach out. If there's issues during construction, again, they're also able to reach out. There are the conditions of approval, which we've worked with the city on, and we are going to comply with. No issues to the conditions. And so then obviously today we're looking for our encroachment permit and the notice of exemption so that we can move forward with this needed project for our system. I do want to mention this is a first phase. We do have a second phase. It's not under design or not included with this permit, but to extend from 8th to Ocean on Dolores. It's another old area, but again, this project is the first phase of that, just from 8th to Santa Lucia. So with that, I would open up to questions that you may have. I do also, with our community coordination, Josh Stratton, our external affairs director, is here, helps with a lot of the community coordination. So if there's questions surrounding around the community, he's here to also help.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Are there any questions by council members? Alessandra?
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you plan on doing any other streets in Carmel in the future? The same kind of thing?
We do have, I'd have to look, we do have, in our planning study, we do have other streets, but this was one of the high priority ones that was designated, but we do have a long list of projects.
Okay.
And this is part of our main replacement program, so we try to, replace a certain amount of pipe per year, and we try to move within our area of PG, Carmel, or Monterey County, and this one falls.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions at this moment. One on the noticing. Do you do that through your Cal-M addresses that you have, or how do you notice on those streets? Is that through the accounts?
It is through the account, so we're able to pull, we have our internal GIS system, so we can pull the account information tied to each lot. And then that will pull whatever the mailing address is associated to that. And so we will then mail using that process.
Okay, my concern there is we have a lot of houses that are rented or used differently, and the noticing to the actual person living there may not get to them if it's an out-of-state or out-of-town owner that you're sending the notice to. So I have a concern about that. I also have a concern about before you do when you need cars moved, are there cars that park periodically on the streets and stay there for a while? Are you going to paper notice those? Because there are people who park on those streets that don't live on those streets and won't know about the project.
Well, so we will put out no parking signs. That would be part of what we would do. I don't know what that might be, but I want to say it's 72 hours typically in advance. So that would be placed ahead of time.
Because there are people who park on those streets that don't live on. I was going to say, I'm hearing myself. Okay, thank you. I'm happy that you're going to put in a couple extra fire hydrants, but I also have a question. How often do you test the fire hydrants?
We have a testing program. It is a yearly. They won't fire flow them every year, but they do go around yearly to test, make sure that valves work, that there's no vegetation blocking if the fire department needs to get there. And then the fire department usually has their own testing program too, where they will go and flow the hydrants.
Okay, and my last question is, when you shut down the water and then you turn it back on, what safety measures do you use to notify people? Because I know in some cases, sometimes bad things get into the water during those switchover periods. Is there any chance of any contamination when you switch over these things, that there might be dirt or whatever in the water? It might be cloudy, it might be...
Yeah, so the water main gets installed, the new water main, and then it goes through a testing portion where they'll pressure test, make sure there's no leaks, and then it'll go through a bacteriological testing process where they flush chlorine through the system, and then there's samples taken in a 48-hour period. And then once those results come back as clean, then it's deemed we're ready to do that tie-in. We follow all the AWWA standards for the tie-in. All the materials between where the new pipe is and the existing will be cut. They're swabbed with chlorine ahead of time. And then once they make the tie-in, we do flush the line with the new hydrants to try to, if there is any debris that's built up during that. But it's a safe practice. We haven't had any notice of violations doing this process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. So a couple of years ago, back in 2009, I expanded my house, and as a result of that process, I installed fire sprinklers. And I live at the very north end of Camino Real, and the water main at that point, which has since been replaced, like this one is, the water main on my street was barely sufficient for fire sprinklers. And I'm sure, I heard you say that that's what's going on. That's what's going on here as well. And as a result of that process back in 2009, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, that I had to install a bigger water meter to accommodate the smaller water line. And the reason that I had to do that was because off of, let's use your example, off of the 4-inch line, the water pressure coming into my house was insufficient to activate the fire sprinklers. And so instead of having to install, and I'm reading these numbers, instead of having to install a 3/4 inch line, I had to install a 1-inch line or something like that. And so I look back on that as sort of a Cal-Am problem sort of created a higher bill for me because I had to install a bigger water meter to accommodate my fire sprinkler. And that was sort of Cal-Am's issue, and now that problem has been sort of fixed. So I'm wondering if people on Dolores between 8th and Santa Lucia that fell into that trap of having to install a larger water meter because they had to install fire sprinklers in the intervening 100 years, for example. And that problem is now going to be the problem is now going to be fixed. I wonder if all the people that have had to install fire sprinklers on Dolores will see an adjustment to their water bills because they now have a water meter that's basically too big for their house.
So the issue that you're talking about, it wouldn't be a water meter issue. It would be having to install your own pump on your side.
Well, that was, with respect, I mean, there is at least one house on my street that has a pump. But we were told when we were doing when the plumber was doing the water pressure test out of a faucet, that we got around the problem. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this in public while Brandon's sitting here, that we got around the problem by installing a bigger water meter. And Cal-Am has a whole series of sort of, you can get credit on your water bill for having a water meter that's like one size too big because you have a fire sprinkler. But if you're 2 sizes too big, which is, I think, was where we ended up, you only get a 1 size credit. And so you end up paying, whatever that number is, $20 extra a month for the privilege of having a fire sprinkler system. So yes. I'm wondering if there are people that fell into that trap of having to install a bigger water meter that is now no longer necessary because you're fixing the water main on the street, if those people will see some relief on their water bills.
So, what I was going to say is, so when it gets to the water meter on the fire sprinkler system, water meters can only handle a certain flow rate by the manufacturer. And so the service line as well. So if you have a 3/4 inch service line and say a 5/8 inch meter, but your fire sprinkler designer requires 40 gallons per minute.
70 was ours.
Well, so then that issue is not a water main issue. It's the service line and the meter aren't sized appropriately. So that's why you had to go up because again, a 1-inch meter can't handle 70 gallons per minute. They're only rated at 50 gallons per minute by the manufacturers. So it's not there will be more fire flow availability and the pressures will be improved, but you're still limited in your case that you're getting at, you're limited by your water meter size and your service line size. So while we're gonna replace old service lines, that will help mitigate, you know, if someone needs, in your case, 70 gallons per minute, that will help that. But then the meter will still need to be increased regardless of the,
So all the water lines from the water main to the street, the water main to the house, the water meter to the house are 1-inch lines. I think that's what you said earlier.
there's, I believe, most are 1 inch and then
Some of
there's a
them are
couple of
2
two,
inches.
yeah.
But the gate is the size of the water meter.
Right, the water
So-
meter, they're only able to handle a certain flow. It's just the hydraulics of them.
Do you know anything about this? Is there?
So Jeff, we may be a little bit beyond pay grade of David here. I
I'd
don't
like to
know.
make sure. I'd like to make sure that people that have a water, if there are people that have water meters that are oversized because of the 4-inch main, are made whole because the main is being fixed.
Well,
That's
why don't we
my.
promise to get back to us on that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll change people's meter, if they've applied for it and they wanna decrease it, that's no problem.
Well, that would be a significant cost. I mean, at some point, if someone has had a larger meter installed because of their fire sprinklers, you can't just go change the meter from a 1-inch meter to a 3/4-inch meter without doing a whole series of tests inside the house to make sure the fire sprinklers.
Well, if we do get, if an application comes in and someone wants to decrease their meter size, we would go back to the initial application that shows the flow that they need. If that flow still needs, you know, it still demands that it's whatever, if it's a 1-inch meter, then it would stay. If they applied and they wanted to decrease it, it's a quick switch to decrease the meter.
Okay.
All right, David, thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Do you have any plans to do Ocean in San Antonio?
Don't know if I have that one off the top of my head.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Oh, that brings up something. That was the other thing that I wanted to ask. Sometimes when Cal-Am has done dig-ups to fix things, and then they throw some asphalt in there and make a patch, and then the patch sinks because maybe there wasn't enough fill in it and they have to come back and do it over. How do you, once you fill this in, is the whole street going to be paved right away, or is there going to be time to see if there's any of that sinking? Because I had a patch at the end of my driveway too, and it's a pretty ugly patch. But I'd like to see if we're going to repave the whole street along Dolores, that we not end up with sinkholes.
Yeah, no, I think, and I don't know, they will put a temporary asphalt over while they are doing the construction, so that may be where the sinking occurred that you're thinking of. But the final paving on the trench section, you know, we'll adhere to the standards set by the city. We'll compaction test, and then the final asphalt paving will be flush with the existing paving where they do their trench section. And then the slurry seal will come over at the end, and won't ever see that there was a trench cut there at all.
Okay, and the city will have an opportunity to inspect that before they sign off on.
Yes.
I see Bob nodding, and I'm
Yeah.
very happy
Yeah.
to see that, because I get the phone calls about, now there's a dip in front of my house where they patched it, so, thank you.
Yep.
All right, are there any other questions of David before I open it up to the public? Let's see if there's anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item today. I don't see anybody.
There's no hands raised on
All
Zoom.
right, David, well done. All right, we'll bring it back then to council for direction. Council members? I'm happy to move the staff recommendation, which is to go ahead and issue the encroachment permit with special conditions of approval. There's 10 of them. They seem very thorough, so I'm willing to make the motion to approve.
Second.
Oh,
Any other discussion?
There's 70.
Hmm?
There's 70, not 10.
Well, there's 10 here, the key conditions of approval for the encroachment permit. There's 10. I know there's a bunch of other ones, but these are the ones on the plan. Okay, so we got a motion, we got a second. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron,
No.
Councilmember Dramoff,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferlito,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards.
Yes.
Mayor Potter.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
Right, the next item then is Resolution 2024-1223, approving change order number 3 for each of the city on-call tree service contractors to include prior trees-related budgeted items totaling $200,000 in addition to a $200,000 mid-year budget allocation. This falls under the heading of former consent items that we're not going to leave on consent anymore because of the magnitude of them. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'll just make this quick. There's no PowerPoint presentation on this one. I just have some general notes, mostly clarify the dollars that are at stake. So going back a little bit, March 2023, council awarded multi-year on-call tree service contracts to 3 tree contractors: Community Tree Service, Topes Tree Service, and West Coast Arborist. The initial contract amount totaled $150,000. Later on, last fiscal year, there was a change order number 1, which was to do the true-up expenses, and mostly because of the storms, we had some different contractors doing different parts of the work. It was a net increase of $33,000 in change order number 1. In June of last year, council approved change orders number 2 for this new fiscal year, 23-24. We gave each contractor $175,000 each. Those funds have been completely expended. Also this fiscal year, for flexibility, we intentionally did not put in those change order number 2. We withheld $125,000 for storm work and $75,000 for the Mission Trail Nature Preserve tree removals. We didn't know which contractors would be doing the tree work. It ended up being Topes. We expended that $75,000. And the $125,000 for emergency storm work, we wanted to keep it flexible, depending on which contractor can meet our schedule under task orders. The February 4th storm alone rang up to be $110,000, that one storm. So we're almost out of money on that. Last month, council approved the mid-year budget augmentation of $200,000 for additional forestry services. We estimate that this will cover 50 large stump removals and about 25 large hazardous tree removals, about $200,000. So the grand total of these change order number 3 is $400,000, $200,000 that we had in the budget, $200,000 that we just got in the mid-year augmentation, for a total of $400,000. Therefore, staff is recommending that council adopts resolution 24-023 to improve change order number 3 to true up the cost for Mission Trails, Nature Preserve, and storm expenses, and to allocate the $200,000 budget augmentation for a total increase of $400,000 to these tree contractors. And before anyone asks me, we planted 40 new trees in the month of March.
Thank you,
That
Bob.
was going to be a question. Anyway, happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions to Bob by council members? Anybody open it up to the public? Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item tonight?
There's no hands raised on
Anybody?
Zoom.
Okay, we'll bring it back to council for direction. Council members?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All right, Nova, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron,
Yes.
Councilmember Dramoff,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferlito,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards.
Yes.
Mayor Potter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, we're going to go to closed session. Counselor, would you read us into closed session? I'll ask if there's any public comment on these items.
Yes, I will. There are 4 closed sessions this afternoon. First one's conference with legal counsel, existing litigation that's authorized by Government Code Section 54956.9D1. The name of the case is Daniel Logan versus the city, and the court case number is in the agenda. Our second item is a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. That's initiation of litigation. It's authorized by Government Code Section 54956.9D4. There's one potential case. Our third one, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is known as the First Murphy House. It's on the northeast corner of Lincoln and 6th Avenue in Carmel. Carmel-by-the-Sea. The agency negotiators and negotiating parties are listed in the agenda. Under negotiation are lease amount and terms. And our fourth and final closed session will be a conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency designated representatives are listed in the agenda, and the employee organization is the Carmel Fire Ambulance Association.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak to these items?
Good afternoon. I'm Jen Weathers, and I'm here on behalf of the Carmel Heritage Society regarding item number C. Mr. Mayor and council members, this is a letter prepared by our board president, Thomas Hood, and he's not able to be here, so he asked me to read it to you all. On behalf of the Carmel Heritage Society Board, I wish to inform you of unanimous support of the intended plan to share use of First Murphy House, a city-owned historic property, with the Executive Office of the Carmel Chamber of Commerce. The board's interest in sharing space in First Murphy House is driven by its need to rebuild and sustain a reliable volunteer roster that will foster the following. I'll just read some of these. We'll be able to expand our open house or our open hours to 5 days a week, and then including weekends. It relieves the executive director the task of handling walk-ins and other visitors, co-host chamber activities related to heritage tourism, free up time for board and executive director to pursue exhibit grants, pursue opportunities regarding local history with our local schools, and maintain a reliable docent group for annual house and inns tour. So really, I'm just gonna, speak on my own. We really are open to, we want to be more open and be able to respond to visitors coming in. We lost a lot of volunteers and docents over time, particularly obviously during the pandemic. And we'd really like to bring that back to life. So this opportunity with the Carmel Chamber of Commerce, we believe, will allow us to share docents, share volunteers, be able to have our executive staff really working on the things that are their jobs to do. So we're just really looking to bring a fresh energy to the First Murphy House, and hope this partnership, collaboration will do that. We don't feel competitive, but we just want to become a more viable information source for residents and tourists. And our docents, we're going to make sure they're very well trained, especially those who don't know anything about the Heritage Society, since that's what they'll be doing there along with the chamber. And we have a whole list of things that they'll be responsible for learning and for training and for reading to understand the history, and a lot about the First Murphy House and the Heritage Society and its vision and mission. And we have, again, a whole list of those. And Chip, I believe Thomas sent this to you to elaborate on that a little bit. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak and share our position on this.
Thank you, Gina. Appreciate it. Next speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Withers. That letter was shared through the city attorney with all the council members. They received it.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Good afternoon, Mayor Potter, members of the council, and city staff. My name is Cindy Lloyd. I've given thoughtful consideration to the proposal by the Chamber of Commerce to occupy space inside the historic First Murphy House for use as their visitor center. Although my intuition says the conflicts between purpose, between an organization with the mission of promoting business in Carmel and Carmel Heritage charged with protecting, preserving, and promoting the cultural heritage of Carmel-by-the-Sea, I understand both sides of the issue before you. Carmel Heritage needs more volunteers to keep the First Murphy open daily. The Chamber indicates that it has an extensive volunteer base. Carmel Heritage needs volunteers who are knowledgeable about Carmel's history, who can speak about sites and why they are important, and who can convey some of our quirky history that is maintained to the present day. In order to satisfy the need of the Chamber for a home base, while satisfying the need for Carmel Heritage for volunteers, the key to success is education. By that I mean an in-depth indoctrination. By Carmel Heritage, using materials required to have been read and internalized by new volunteers. It is incumbent upon Carmel Heritage to develop an educational handbook, to have person-to-person educational sessions, and to assess the docent's knowledge before a decision is made to lease the First Murphy to the Chamber. In closing, I quote two men who have faced difficult issues before them. Realizing he could not win, Chief Sitting Bull of the Oglala Sioux said, "I will fight no more forever." In 1962, during a political campaign for president, one candidate shared a lesson he had learned from his mentor. It is the value of compromise over unproductive rigidity that creates success. Compromise and education are twofold in making an idea a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. Appreciate that. Anybody else wishing to speak today?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you in advance for your time. As you know, my name is Sigel Lomas. I am on the board and past board chair for the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here on their behalf this evening. And the proposal for the for the Carmel Heritage Society and the Chamber to share offices at the First Murphy House. Both boards of the organizations are 100% in support of this and are enthusiastic and hopeful the city will approve. Following the March 4th closed session, at the request of the council, the Heritage Society submitted a letter outlining a training program for all docents and volunteers working at the First Murphy House. In addition, the Chamber volunteers receive, these individuals will be well equipped to speak on both Carmel commerce and culture. And we are hopeful that Mrs. Lloyd, Cindy Lloyd, thank you very much for your presentation earlier, that you would be a part of helping put together the training material to make sure that we are giving the material exactly as it should be presented. Through the proposed public partnership, the Murphy House can be open to visitors 7 days a week. Currently, it is open at only a limited number of hours per week. This extended accessibility will encourage more tourists to visit and explore Carmel-by-the-Sea, boosting local businesses and our city's economy. The Chamber's 30-plus volunteers and growing and staff will be educated so they can serve on behalf of both organizations. The current visitor center volunteers are passionate about their community, the businesses, and our history. Over the last month, I have had several community members reach out to me, letting me know they wish to be a part of the volunteer docent program if the city approves the Chamber residing at the First Murphy House. We believe Carmel's historical heritage is a treasure that should be cherished and showcased for generations to come. Both organizations believe by joining forces, we can create a synergy that benefits both organizations and the community at large. The Murphy House is very special to our community, and as a dual custodian, the Chamber will be able to assist in giving it the love that it deserves in needed maintenance for this beautiful 1902 landmark. We believe this is a perfect office space for the Chamber, as there truly is no better building in Carmel that represents our history and the culture better than the First Murphy House. With the addition of a second visitor center, the number of visitors our volunteers and staff touch daily can increase considerably. These individuals provide helpful information in making recommendations that ultimately enhance the visitors' experience in Carmel-by-the-Sea which can result in longer stays and return visits. These volunteers make restaurants and hotel recommendations. They recommend galleries and retail shops, along with places to go to see and things to do, which ultimately drives dollars to our local businesses. With the expansion of the Murphy House, they will also be able to share information on Carmel's rich history and culture. We believe granting permission to the Carmel Heritage Society and the Chamber of Commerce to share the Murphy House as the office and visitor center is a decision that aligns in the best interest of our community. We respectfully request your full consideration and your support on this proposal.
Thank you, Sigel.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak tonight? Seeing no one,
There's
I'll
no
close the public comment period. We'll go into closed session. Those who can stay.
Could I add an
Okay.
item, just real quick, Mr. Mayor? I know last time we spoke about the training manuals, and I just came across something in doing some research that I would like to have them add because I think it would be very helpful. It's something the city put together in 2016 for the centennial. It's an 18-page little booklet, summarizes all of Carmel's history. It's by Catherine Galtieri and Lynn Momboys, and I think that would be very beneficial, and it would be a great thing that they could also use for training.
Good, well, I hope that's duly noted. Good, thank you. All right, we're going to closed session. Stand here.
Yeah, we'll stay here.